Roller Coaster Tycoon. Cherished by both roller coaster enthusiasts and the general public alike, the game holds up extremely well today despite being over 22 years old. Much of that can be attributed to the in-depth coaster building tool, and the amount of detail game designer Chris Sawyer put into each coaster model. I thought it'd be fun to look at each coaster type from the original games and try to find their real-world inspiration. For some it was quite obvious, while for others I had to do a little digging. So sit back, relax, and throw on Rock Style 2 because we're checking out every RCT classic coaster type in real life. In the vanilla version of Roller Coaster Tycoon, this was the only train available for the wooden coaster, and seems reminiscent of the old-fashioned two-seater coaster cars built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, or PTC. You can still find these today on wooden coasters like Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldsmere in Erie, Pennsylvania. Once popular in the 1950s and 60s, the wooden Wild Mouse is now nearly extinct, having been replaced by modern steel models. Blackpool Pleasure Beach's Wild Mouse, which sadly closed in 2017, was likely the inspiration for the mouse-shaped cars found in the game. The wooden Wild Mine is just the wooden Wild Mouse, but with mine cars. The first of a few cosmetic variants we'll see. The minecart design was likely inspired by King Solomon's Mines, which operated at Southport Pleasureland in the UK until 2006. The Junior coaster is based off of the Zierer Tivoli model, a family coaster that could be found at parks around the globe, often with cute little Ladybug trains. My home park, Adventureland in New York, had one of these while I was growing up. The mini coaster has several different car options in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, but in RCT 1, your only option was the rocket car. These cars are probably based off of the single-file rocket-shaped cars found on Space Mountain at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The track design, however, seems to be based off of Anton Schwarzkopf's Jetstar or Wildcat coasters, but we'll talk more about them later. The Mine Train coaster is an interesting case, as it seems to be a hybrid of two different Mine Train models from different manufacturers. The wooden supports in the game seem to echo the early mine trains built by Aerodynamics, while the track and train design seemed to be inspired by Vekoma mine trains. In the end, I think it leans much more Vekoma than Aero, and was almost definitely inspired by the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad rides found at Disney parks worldwide. One of the most popular coasters in the game, the looping roller coaster, was inspired by the real-life looping coasters built by Anton Schwarzkopf. This German engineer designed the first ever modern looping coaster, Magic Mountain's Revolution, in 1976. Another coaster inspired by both Aerodynamics and Vekoma. After Arrow invented the popular coaster model in 1975 with Corkscrew at Knott's Berry Farm, Arrow contracted Vekoma to help build their rides in Europe. Vekoma eventually licensed their own coaster track and trains, which were nearly identical to Arrow's, and began building coasters themselves. We can especially thank Vekoma for their Boomerang model, a shuttle coaster not only found around the globe, but throughout Roller Coaster Tycoon playthroughs. The stand-up roller coaster is based off of the stand-up coasters built by the Japanese manufacturer Togo, the original inventors of the stand-up coaster train in 1982. The concept has since been improved upon by other manufacturers, which we'll get to later. These suspended swinging cars are based off of Aerodynamics' suspended coaster, and can be seen on Ninja at Six Flags Magic Mountain or Iron Dragon at Cedar Point. Although it may appear to be at first, this isn't actually an uninspired reskin of Arrow's suspended coaster cars like you'd see in the garbage Roller Coaster Tycoon expansion packs. The airplane cars were likely inspired by Vekoma's take on the suspended coaster, what they call their swinging turns model, which sometimes feature these airplane-themed trains. The mini suspended coaster looks to be directly inspired by the Pteradon Flyers coaster at Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida, built by the American company Setpoint, who never built another coaster like it. The Dutch company CarryPro apparently helped design the ride and continue to build coasters similar to it, but without the feet dangling effect seen in the game. Whew, okay, this one took forever to find, but I'm convinced that the mini suspended flying coaster was inspired by Skytrack, which operated at Granada Studios in the UK from 1997 to 1998. Technically, it was the world's first flying roller coaster, even if it was plagued with issues. Look no further than Aerodynamics' steeplechase model for this ride's inspiration. Only two were ever built, with steeplechase at Blackpool Pleasure Beach being the only one still operating today. Unlike the suspended swinging airplane cars, I'm pretty sure this is just a reskin. Although more modern takes on the steeplechase coaster feature motorcycle-themed cars, I could not find any real-life single-rail steeplechase model with these motorbike vehicles. The bobsleigh coaster in RCT1 is based off of the bobsled coaster made by the German manufacturer Mach Rides. The track style and multi-car trains distinguish it from the other bobsled model on the market, which we'll get to later. The reverse freefall coaster was obviously inspired by the reverse freefall coaster, which was designed and built by Intamin Amusement Rides. Only 2 of these rides were ever constructed, a dual-track version at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which still operates today, and the defunct Tower of Terror at Dreamworld in Australia. Another obvious one, this time inspired by the dive machine coasters built by Bolliger and Mabyard, or B&M. Interestingly, the vertical drop coaster is the only B&M inspired ride in vanilla RCT1. An ancient coaster type, side friction coasters were popular in the early 1900s and were often constructed as figure-8 coasters like Leap the Dips at Lakemont Park in Pennsylvania. Notably, these rides existed before the invention of the upstop wheel, or the set of wheels that run under the rails and keep coaster cars on the track. Another ancient coaster type, the Virginia Reel was a spinning side friction coaster featuring circular tubs that zigzagged riders down a series of unbanked hairpin turns. No full-size Virginia Reels still operate today, with the last one closing at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1982, but there is an adorable miniature version operating at Joyland in the UK. The final entry in the ancient coaster trio, not much is known about the reverser coaster, as it looks like only one was ever built. In Robert Cartmell's 1987 book The Incredible Scream Machine, A History of the Roller Coaster, he details an insane ride called the Reverser, which allegedly operated from 1915 to 1925 at Utah's Saltaire Park. Incredibly, it seemed to operate just as it does in the game, with the car's rear wheels having the ability to swivel during certain sections of the ride. The articulated coaster train for the wooden coaster is either a reference to Frederick Church's Bob's Train, which was popular on his twisty 1920s coasters, or Great Coasters International's Millennium Flyer train, which itself is a modern-day take on Church's Bob's Train. But considering the trains could be found on Woodpecker in the Haunted Harbor scenario, a ride listed as 68 years old in the game, they're probably Bob's trains. There are many manufacturers taking a bite out of the steel Wild Mouse cheese, as they say, so this was a tough one to pinpoint. But I'm pretty sure the mouse-shaped cars in RCT1 were inspired by the cars found on the Wild Mouse coasters built by Aerodynamics, what they call their Mad Mouse model. The resemblance is just too strong. B&M's second appearance in the game, the Twister roller coaster was clearly inspired by the classic B&M sit-down coaster, a famous example being Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa. The superior version of the stand-up coaster, both in Roller Coaster Tycoon and real life, the track design and 4-cross seating scream B&M influence. While the stand-up coaster has fallen out of style in recent years, a few are still operating, such as Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. Chris Sawyer really corrected for the lack of B&M coaster models in the base game with added attractions. This is the B&M Floorless Coaster, a model that was all the rage when this expansion pack was released. It's still quite popular 2 decades later. The second ride inspired by a coaster from Togo, the Heartline Twister is based off of Togo's Ultra Twister model. They built a couple of these rides in the 80s and 90s, and 3 still operate today, including the infamous Dive Loop model at Rusutsu Resort in Japan. Instead of the switch track transition seen in Roller Coaster Tycoon and all of the other real-life Ultra Twisters, this one transitions with an insane-looking dive loop maneuver, something you unfortunately cannot build in the game. The flying roller coaster's track design gives this away as a B&M flying roller coaster, as well as how the riders depart the station lying face down, as opposed to Vekoma's original take on the flying coaster, named the Flying Dutchman, also has 4-across seating, but has riders exiting the station lying face up, hence the Lay Down roller coaster title in RCT. Further inspiration can be seen in the ride's special track elements, with the vertical loop and corkscrews being elements seen on Vekoma's real-world Flying Dutchman coasters like Batwing at Six Flags America. Another coaster based off of a rather obscure real-world ride, the inverted hairpin coaster was loosely inspired by the gliding coaster built by the French manufacturer Riverchon. Interestingly, the real-life version has bank turns while the in-game version does not. Only one gliding coaster was ever built and is found on the European Fair circuit. Most likely inspired by the hypercoasters built by Aerodynamics, although the hypercoasters built by D.H. Morgan are very similar in design. However, the design of the trains in the game seem to most directly resemble those on the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, a ride built by Arrow, so we'll go with that. The box track design and 4-across seating again points to B&M, the creator of the world's first inverted coaster, Batman the Ride, at Six Flags Great America in 1992. The compact inverted coaster is clearly inspired by the infamous Vekoma suspended looping coaster models, or SLCs, which can be found torturing riders around the globe. There's even a pre-built SLC in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, found in the Six Flags Belgium scenario, a recreation of the real-world vampire at today's Walibi, Belgium. This train reflects Vekoma's Invertigo model, which is basically an inverted boomerang, with unique cars allowing riders to face one another. Only 5 of these were built, and 3 still operate today. The air-powered vertical coaster takes direct inspiration from S&S's thrust air coasters. Only 2 of these were built, the defunct Hypersonic XLC at King's Dominion, and Dododampa at Fuji-Q Highland in Japan. While Dododampa still operates today, a vertical loop was installed where the ride's iconic airtime hill used to be, thus taking the vertical out of the air-powered vertical coaster. While there are a couple water coasters on the market, notably from the manufacturer Mack Rides, the water coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon has a different track style which seems to be inspired by the liquid coaster from Premier Rides. Only 2 of these were ever built, Buzzsaw Falls at Silver Dollar City, and this ride at Finland's Linnanmäki. After introducing the Mack Rides bobsled coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1, Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 added the Intamin bobsled, kind of. Instead of being a separate coaster with a different track design, players now have the option to add an Intamin-inspired 6-passenger single car to their bobsled, as seen in the Six Flags Over Texas scenario with La Vibora, a real-life Intamin bobsled. The third train added to the compact inverted coaster, or the Vekoma-inspired inverted coaster. This train is based on Vekoma's giant inverted boomerang model, and features a unique, staggered 4-across seating arrangement. The Giga Coaster is unsurprisingly based off of Intamin's Giga Coaster model, specifically Millennium Force, but also bears resemblance to their Mega Coaster model, as the 2 have very similar designs in real life. One is just a bit smaller than the other. Another coaster inspired by a model from Intamin, the Inverted Impulse Coaster is based off of their Impulse Coaster model, seen here with Possessed at Dorney Park. This ride is based off of Premier Rides' LIM Launch Coaster. This ride model uses electromagnets to launch riders, and was popular in the late 90s. LIM, or Linear Induction Motor technology, has been replaced in later years by a similar but more effective technology named LSM, or Linear Synchronous Motors. The Mine Ride, which I honestly don't think I've ever built in the game, is inspired by the Mack Rides powered coaster, named this, according to RCDB, and no, I will not attempt to pronounce it. RCT2 saw the addition of a new car to the Steel Wild Mouse, the Mine Car, inspired by the more generic-looking Wild Mouse train designed by Mack Rides. But why the name Mine Car? Probably because the game designers based this coaster off of Walibi Holland's Flying Dutchman Gold Mine, which appears in the Six Flags Holland scenario. Here we are, the additional mini coaster cars I promised. The first new cosmetic variant is the automobile cars, inspired by the vehicles found on Schwarzkopf's Wildcat coasters. The toboggan cars are based off of another Schwarzkopf coaster model, the Jetstar model, not to be confused with the Jetstar 2 or Jumbo Jet model, which we'll see a bit later. The multi-dimension roller coaster takes inspiration from one of the most ludicrous coasters ever built, the 4th Dimension Coaster X, now known as X2. Built by Aerodynamics, the company went bankrupt soon after the ride's construction, but the 4th Dimension coaster lives on at S&S, who have built 2 more of these beasts after acquiring Arrow's assets in 2002. With its curved lift hills and single-file toboggan-like trains, the Spiral Coaster was clearly inspired by Schwarzkopf's Jetstar 2 and Jumbo Jet coasters. Since the Hyper Twister coaster contains 2 train styles, it was actually inspired by 2 different manufacturers. The train with 2 across seating is based off of the Giovanola Mega Coaster. Only 2 of these were built, and both are featured in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. The train with 4 across seating is based off of the much more common and enjoyable B&M Hypercoaster, an example being Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. A new cosmetic variant of the steeplechase coaster, the Soapbox Derby Racers was inspired by a real-life variant of the aerodynamic steeplechase coaster, Wacky Soapbox Racers at Knott's Berry Farm. Another cosmetic variant, this time of the suspended roller coaster. The swinging floorless cars, just like the airplane cars, are based off of a train designed by Vekoma. Found today on all of their swinging turns models, the floorless trains can also be found on the Arrow-designed Vampire at Chessington Worlds of Adventures in the UK. The spinning Wild Mouse is likely based off of the design by Ravine, who is known almost exclusively for their spinning Wild Mouse coasters. The Italian manufacturer Zamperla also has a spinning mouse model, but since Zamperla's first spinning coaster opened in 2005, 3 years after RCT2 came out, I'm sticking with Ravine. We end this list where we started, with the Philadelphia Toboggan Company. The 6-seater wooden coaster train is based off of PTC's higher capacity 3-seat coaster car. Some real-life parks install their PTC 3-seat coaster cars so that they run the course backwards, and RCT2 allows you to do that as well with the 6-seater reverse train for the wooden coaster. Whew, we reached the end of the list. It's pretty impressive how many unique coaster types were crammed into these games. Let me know if you like this video. If so, I'll be sure to make more like this one. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to support the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.